You are now entering a dangerous liberty zone where God-given natural rights are held sacred and exercised. This is your warning. Tyranny, fascism, and censorship will not be tolerated. Ideas will be exchanged freely. Rigorous debate and open discourse is encouraged. If you are weak and your beliefs are fragile, you should leave now. Prepare yourself. We are now live on the Dangerous Liberty Podcast. All right, folks, welcome to another Dangerous Liberty Podcast. We got a great show for you. I want to say hi to everybody out there. Hope everybody's having a wonderful Thursday. I want to say hi to everybody over in the comment section. We got Michael Hen, we got Spook, we got Dark Watch 479, Tina Clark 7145, Summer 8337, Lori Matthews, always good to see you, Lori Werewolf 6. Whole bunch of other folks. Melissa Walker, of course, I can't say hi to everybody, but we had Gray Hughes in the chat a little while ago. No, you're a liar. No, you're a liar. All right. Well, please pull up anything that I've lied about. Feel free to go through my content because I've been going through Candace's content, and I can tell you there are lots of lies. There are lots of contradictions. There are lots of deceptions, and we're going to go through some of those tonight. I've been working on a video, and I'll probably even show a couple of clips from the video where I prove this stuff, and we're going to show you what evidence actually looks like. Evidence saying my sources only is not evidence. Feels and vibes. They're not evidence. They're not logical. But we'll get into all that. But without further ado, what I want to do is bring in Natalie Denise. Natalie, am I saying your name right?
That is correct.
I feel like you're
Thank you for having me.
No. Thanks for coming on. Just so you guys know, I saw Natalie. She was putting out some really good content. As a matter of fact, I actually included a short that she made for X into the video that I'll be publishing tomorrow. I meant to get it published tonight. Just didn't happen. But I think you guys will find that interesting. And again, solid proof that Candace is intentionally lying on many different topics. But Natalie, if you will, just take a minute and introduce yourself to everybody and tell them a little bit about you.
Oh, sure. So thanks for having me, first of all. And yeah, my name is a little weird. It is missing an A because it was a typo when I was born. It was supposed to be Natalie and they forgot the A. So they just never changed it. So Natalie it is. I am a YouTuber. Unfortunately, I'm super shadow banned right now. Originally, I did research conspiracy theories, especially back in the 2019-2020 era, when those were very sensational. And, that really transpired over the years. I kept researching until some of these conspiracy theories kind of just hit a dead end, and it wasn't backed with anything sensational. And I accepted that. So I went on hiatus, and now I am back, with the recent tragedy of Charlie Kirk being murdered and, the inspiration of his life and how he stood so hard on his faith. That's what kind of got me really charged up to come back and, just charge our modern day pop culture with a Christian perspective. So now I'm back on YouTube. Before YouTube, though, I've spent a little over a decade within the anti-trafficking volunteership industry. Lots of ministry outreach, street outreach, mentorship. And now I am trying to build up my own anti-trafficking organization. We did publish our first work a couple summers ago, on the anti-trafficking hotline, or the national hotline for anti-trafficking. And that took about almost 2 years of research. So now that we've did our market research on that, we are trying to build our own resource. So that's a little bit about me, and then just kicking butt on social media with the lies and the contradictions. That's where I'm at now.
Well, we got plenty of material to work with. There's no doubt about it. Look, all joking aside, and I talk about this, very similar to you, Natalie. Number one, when I've been following Charlie Kirk for a really long time. I think the work that he did and the work that TPUSA continues to do is super important. I think TPUSA and Charlie Kirk were single-handedly responsible for us beating Kamala Harris. And there's good proof of that. He's attributed with 2.5 million votes, Charlie Kirk and TPUSA, and we beat Kamala Harris by 2.3 million, and I think that 2.5 is probably a little low. And more importantly, though, what Charlie Kirk and TPUSA did was they created a revival for conservatism across our youth. And that is huge. Even when I was growing up, everybody as teenagers and things like that were definitely much more liberal or a little bit rebellious against their parents or whatever else. And he made being a Christian cool again. He made being a conservative cool again. And what we're seeing is a dismantling of that with zero evidence, by the way. And thankfully, TPUSA put out a response to Candace today. It was actually yesterday, and I guess Candace has acknowledged that response, and apparently is going to go on to a live stream. And I'm looking forward to her sitting there and accusing them of murder and all the other things that she has accused them of, and seeing their response. But what has happened and what Candace is doing is, I think, is damaging our country. It's definitely damaging the chances. I don't care what you think about Trump. All right, there's a lot to criticize for sure. It's 1,000 times better than having Joe Biden 2.0 in 2028.
Right.
And that's what's happening. That's what we're moving towards. So, and it'd be look, I think if TPUSA and some of the things that they said were legitimate or had evidence to back them up, I don't think either one of those are true. And, it'd be another thing. And I'd be right there criticizing them or whatever else. But almost everything is just wholesale fiction and defamation, by definition. So and I'm just glad to see people like you having the courage to stand up and get out there and point some of these things out. I've been doing it on X, and we're seeing other people do this because it's so important of what's going on. And I was kind of like the same. TPUSA basically said, we thought it would die off. People would come to their senses. And I kind of thought the same thing. So I avoided that fight for a while, but they're not. Like, we literally have a Candace cult because here's the problem. You can't ask questions of Candace. You can't demand evidence of Candace, even though she demands evidence of everybody. It's such a double standard of what's going on with her. And then the attacks, you and I were talking about that a little bit before this. Like, what have you experienced since you started criticizing Candace, the attacks on you and your channel and everything else going on?
Yeah, I mean, Blake Neff said it perfectly yesterday that, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he basically alluded that the people that were attacking the TPUSA entity, the associates, Charlie Kirk's friends, were in the sense he said they were worse than Antifa. And I would have to agree.
100%.
These people take enjoyment out of being gross and unpleasant. That's a direct quote from Blake Neff. And I have seen that very thing on my own platform, whether I am, and I'm posting everywhere, at least on X, there's discourse and there's open free speech. And I think that says a lot about all the other platforms that I post on, because it does seem to be that there are audiences that push back and that concur with what we're observing. But on other platforms like Instagram and Facebook, I mean, it is bad. You've got people, and I do believe that this is a mixture of actual people, actual fans of Candace. I call them Cantifa now, or Candacites, because they do take enjoyment in saying the most vile things and taking on the worst slurs. I myself, I call myself a Christian Zionist, and I'm very proud about that. I do have a belief that, Israel has, or, Jewish people have a right to their homeland, and Israel deserves to exist. I find that people have vilified that word, and it's like, there's a lot of stuff going on with that. I say operation because I do believe that what I'm seeing is an operation, a demoralization operation. And especially like my fight is against Christians being derailed by this rhetoric as well. So to sum it all up, very vile, very, ugly behavior. And it's ironic because a lot of these accounts have Christ is king in their bio. So that's what I'm saying. A lot of irony and just gross behavior.
Folks, I forgot to kind of lay out number one, the format. I apologize, and some rules on this live stream. Number one, me and Natalie are going to talk for a while, just like a normal podcast. And after a while, the last half of it, we will definitely open up the floor to questions. We will prioritize super chats. We appreciate those that support this channel. As far as anybody on our channel, if you are using ad hominems, calling people names or whatever else, you just get banned. If you're not adult enough to have a conversation and to discuss what we have, we want to include you in the conversation. And by the way, we recommend and encourage discourse and disagreement. All right. But what you're not going to do is we're not going to sit here and just call people names and things like that. So if that happens, my mods or myself will just block you, and you can go and put yourself in an echo chamber where you do whatever you do. Right. I think the problem here too is that it's very clear to me that people are so susceptible right now to disinformation, and it is because our government has lied to us so many times, and that is the unfortunate truth. Look, I believe that there are regular government conspiracies. We've seen that. There's proof of that time and time again. I don't care if you want to talk about COVID, if you want to talk about the election of 2020. I think that still to me is like the biggest conspiracy that just about has ever happened, definitely during my lifetime. Like, that election was stolen. I 100% believe it. I believe there's evidence for it. I believe there's zero political will and definitely no will of the media to investigate it. Of course, COVID, MK Ultra. I think there's a high chance that that JFK was actually murdered by our country. There's a lot. All right. And many more. But the fact is that just because these things happened, it is not logical to say, hey, this is also a conspiracy. You need to be able to look at every single one of these different situations individually and be able to assess them with the evidence and the information that you have. And when we have something as highly documented as the Charlie Kirk assassination, I mean, literally, we still are getting new footage that is coming out every single day. We've all seen what's going on. And, from the beginning, there was clearly a disinformation campaign coming out with 50 different theories of what happened. And I think it really did damage people's psyche and ability, even though they know most of that stuff has either been debunked or proven incorrect.
Mhm.
Like, it was kind of baked in the cake at that point that, hey, there's something fishy here. There's something going on, and we're just not going to accept no matter what evidence points to the official narrative or whatever you want to call it. So, we are clearly susceptible to a lot of disinformation. I think a lot of different forces are exploiting that fact.
Yeah, 100%. And you hit it right on the nail. I do feel that, back in the summer of love days and the COVID days, it was almost as if we were a collective counterculture. We wanted to fight back against not just the mainstream industry such as Hollywood and celebrities, but the mainstream media. And it was like it literally was a big cabal that we had to counteract. And it's like, we saw that we activated against that collectively. I would say, as conservatives and people who converted as conservatives, and because of that, and because it was attached to the governmental entity that wanted to feed us that propaganda, I do see that. I can see why people have such a high distrust. However, what happened and what transpired from there is that we began to trust these alternative voices, these alternative podcasters, and there was alternative news and alternative accounts out there. And because we disengaged from mainstream media, rightfully so, because they were illustratively lying to us, we decided to engage and just completely outsource our critical thinking skills to these influencers. And I think that's what happened, because it's like you put all your eggs in one basket and you don't really think for yourself. When and I feel like part of that is spiritual blindness, when you allow for somebody else to think for you, and they tell you exactly how to think. And I do see that is happening right now, and I agree with you. I concur with all of those conspiracy theories. I think you need to take them individualistically and examine them for what they are, because they have their own set of unique evidence, and it's not all one monolith. What has happened is because people have now engaged themselves and attached themselves to these alternative voices and these podcasters, then everything that the government has lied to us about, they're like, now you can trust us because we're going to tell you the truth. And I think that's where we're at now. This disinformation campaign, where we were able to see it for what it was back in 2019, 2020. I think those were like the golden years of like woke, like radical liberal woke.
Yeah, I think
And
we all woke up. I think a lot of people did, for sure.
yeah. Yeah. And I feel like the tacticians behind this information war got very clever, because I do see where, again, I saw conservative media, alternative voices, a lot of these influencers that you see that are pushing the Candace narratives. I've fought with them back in 2019 against the information war. So I've seen it, and it's like, now it's infiltrated into the conservative sphere, and it's like, how can you fight against your own side? But that's what happened to the left. The left didn't call out the crazies and the radicals, and that's why they imploded. And the same thing can happen to us if we don't call it out. And that's why I think it got to a boiling point where Tim Pool called out the conservative sphere and told them to call it out.
Yeah. Yeah, the one thing I will say about the left is they know how to get in lockstep, and they're definitely much more monolithic, and they will put up with the problem with the conservative party, which is great, by the way, is that we eat our own, right? We are going to be more critical, or as critical, of the Trump administration as the left will be. And again, we kind of, we and all the politicians, and I'm not saying that we should get away from that, but that's just a fact that the left, it votes blue no matter who. But what the right does, if they don't have the perfect candidate all the time, a lot of them are just going to stay home. And for whatever reason, they're just not as engaged in politics. And I think Charlie Kirk did a great job of getting people re-engaged and getting them to see the bigger picture of what was at stake, because we have a lot at stake. And not only did Charlie Kirk get Trump elected for the second term, the other thing that TPUSA, and especially Charlie, was a huge bulwark and was the only major force out there stopping the trans ideology movement, communism, socialism. And I really do think that all of these forces are now working together with, I wouldn't even say directly with Candace, but I think they're behind pushing some of these narratives that we see, because it's damaging to America just for the chaos of it. And on top of that, it's definitely damaging the conservative party, which is the only party standing up against China and some of these other foreign adversaries in any sort of meaningful way. The Democrats talk a big game, but every time that they're in office, they just crumble. Like that's why we have NAFTA. That's why we have some of these trade agreements that are so damaging to the United States, and we've lost all of our production. They went overseas, is because time after time, both Republicans and Democrats, without a doubt, has sold out this country time and time again. But I will say the lesser of two evils by a long shot is what we have in the conservative party and what we have on the Republican party. So I don't know. I think, like I said, I think this is super important. And I think just for the sake of truth, these things need to be discussed, because as we move into, and we're already seeing it, we have, AI, we have all these bots, we're being manipulated by algorithms to see what it wants us to see. And look, I really do think, I don't know what your thoughts on this, Natalie, but I really do think that there is a huge push by Google, and I have some thoughts on maybe the motives. They're pushing Candace and her followers and people like that are pushing these conspiracy. And I think part of it is definitely it's more entertaining. It's sexier than the truth. So there's that part. But I do think that they are pushing this algorithmically as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you, for instance, I watched a little bit of the Candace podcast tonight, and she went into She drilled into Tim Pool and his point about the midterms, that we were going to lose the midterms. And Candace has said it before, that she's not voting and that she's not lifting a finger, demoralizing Americans from voting, which is completely antithetical to TPUSA and what Charlie Kirk did with his organization. It was a push for votes. And she said it again tonight. She doesn't care about the midterm. She doesn't care about voting. And, along with her fan base, she kind of motivated them or demotivated is the best word, to not vote because they're not getting what the Americans deserve. And it's like, this disinformation campaign has really done a work on people, because Trump has, if you really think about it, amongst as a bird's eye view, Trump has not even been in office for a full year.
Right.
And these people are claiming that he's a traitor and he's not doing this and doing that. First of all, Trump never campaigned as an isolationist president. He never did that. He didn't do that in his first presidency either. So I'm really confused where all of this came out, what narratives just got spun up all of a sudden, that he was supposed to be this isolationist president and he was supposed to cave to demands of people on the internet, when he was very clear and he was very transparent about his policies. So, I can see it from that aspect as well. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. The algorithm, if you really think about it again, Candace Owens always, it's really ironic, and I just cannot understand how some people can't see it. And again, I do attribute this to spiritual blindness, because it's actually right in front of your face, where she's accusing people of making money, and she's accusing people of taking money, and they're paid to have these opinions about me. And it's like, you have such a reprobate mind that you think that because people have opinions and they hit tweet, that they have to be paid thousands of dollars. When you look at Candace, she's projecting, because she's making millions of dollars on the grave of Charlie Kirk, And so with that being said, the algorithm has her uncensored, monetized with sponsors and with super chats. So that says a lot about her platform and what's being pushed right now. A lot of her crowd who promote her and circulate her content and her narratives as well, they claim this whole, like, you can't talk about Israel, you can't talk about Jewish people, but it's like they're at the forefront of this algorithm, talking about Israel, demonizing Jewish people, demonizing Israel, you know what I mean? And it's like everything gets conflated and nobody really separates, like, Jewish people, the Holy Land, and Israel. Like, I understand people have full rights to, like, criticize the government of Israel, but when it comes to Christians and the Holy Land and Jewish people, like, Christians who are well studied in scripture understand that, there are rights biblically to each one of these components, and and there's dualities as well, and people just don't think in nuance anymore. They're just all.
That's what I was going to say. There's a lot of nuance there. And what it has devolved into is just, oh, the Jews, which I hate. Like,
Me too.
Like, just objectively speaking, and I've said this 100 times, like, I am indifferent to Israel. I really am. Like, I'm so tired of the United States giving money away to all these foreign countries. Israel, I've definitely become more critical of Israel because of the way that they've prosecuted the war in Gaza. I think that should have been done differently. I also think that we as the United States should have been much more aggressive in getting the United States citizens back. Like I said on the last podcast, if I was the president and we had hostages in Gaza, there would be 10,000 tanks on the border of Israel, and you'd have 12 hours to get our people back, or we're rolling through. And you think it looks bad now? It would have looked much worse by the time I was done. But that being said, things could be done a little differently. And I do think that there's so much emotion in what's going on there. But that being, all that stuff is like those are political discussions and geopolitical discussions, and we can have discussions about the influence of all the different lobbyists, which, by the way, like, the APAC is like one of the smallest lobbyists in the United States. It's such less of a problem than we're dealing with pharmaceuticals, dealing with the defense contractors. Like, we have so many bigger problems than Israel. And then once we start saying Jews everything and blaming Jews, like it's just such a dumb argument. So many Jews in the United States, like they're like the most diverse group of people. They're like there's liberals, conservatives, religious, non-religious. Some of them are anti-Zionist. Like it doesn't make sense. And it's just like everything else that Candace does, it's completely incoherent. And that was one of the biggest. I just sat back and I didn't really pay attention to Candace for like the first month. And then I started getting snippets of, because I didn't watch her show. I have been watching her show religiously. I sat through like 2 days. I went through like 8 hours a day of watching her show, and that was rough. But the whole thing is incoherent. It's like, we have the National Guard, we have these airborne units, we have French Foreign Legion, Egyptian planes, and she never brings it together and makes it make sense. And the one thing that I would love for her to explain, we have this, very sophisticated multinational assassination team that come over here. Like, explain to me the how, because you have yet to do that. I don't know where you think the shooter was. I don't know where was it? Like, why was there a Jewish people there? Why was there Israelis rather? Why was there French Foreign Legion? What was their roles? What did they do? Where were they? How come nobody saw them?
Right.
Like none of it makes sense. It's like Candace Owens has a laser and is just moving it around, and cats are chasing these dots all over the place.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
And
that's the best. That is the best analogy. That I never thought about it that way, but yes.
That's what it is. It's just like every show she introduces one or two new elements. So like, where did this come from? Like, how does this? And then the thing is she never goes back and like exonerates people that she accused of before. That really, when we're talking about these different elements, like they're mutually exclusive. Like the security team can't be in on it, and Israel, or like the French Foreign Legion, or like, I don't even know. But one thing I do want to do real quick, because I thought this was a great thing that you did. If you're not following Natalie on X and YouTube, make sure you go do that. I put her links to her accounts down in the description below. But she put this out. She was the only one that I saw. So to me, she broke the story as far as I'm concerned. But this was a great little video that she put together that I want you guys to see.
Wait the hell a minute. So right before Thanksgiving break, you guys know what Candace posted, this elaborate plot by foreign governments, including the Macrons, the French government, and one Israeli, apparently, that planned to assassinate her. Very, very drastic claim. I mean, this is serious. So House and Habit posted this earlier today, that apparently Candace Owens, on this break where she went off air dramatically, apparently, allegedly, she went on vacation to Dollywood, which, by the way, is completely fine. I'm not coming at you for that. Enjoy yourself, girl. But you just claimed that an entire foreign government is trying to assassinate you, girl. Like, along with one Israeli, apparently, like, and you're at Dollywood? This is the text message that is attached to that photo, and it reads, "My daughter's best friend went to Tennessee for Thanksgiving. They spent yesterday at Dollywood. Guess who she ran into? Yep, Candace Owens, out in the open in a public place amongst claimed assassination attempts. Make it make sense." And yes, this photo is from yesterday. Oh my God. And if this is true, that her daughter's best friend just ran up to Candace Owens, that means that Candace Owens didn't have her security on her or something. You know what I mean? She wasn't high security, right? Is that what that means? So, like, help me make this make sense. Like, there's a foreign operation plotting her assassination, so much so that she ran to the White House, all the stuff. But she allowed like some rando stranger run up to her. You know what I mean? Dollywood does not look low-key whatsoever. It looks like it has a lot of foot traffic, a lot of people, high population, Disneyland, Disney World, maybe not that much. You know what I mean? Astroworld, maybe you guys remember that. Six Flags, something like that. This is just high level detail. Okay. Dollywood is a theme park. It's owned by Hershend and Dolly Parton Productions, and it's located in Knoxville metropolitan area in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, near the gateway of the Great Smoky Mountains. I bet it's beautiful. It sounds beautiful. Hosting nearly 3 million guests in a typical season from mid-March to the Christmas holidays. It sounds very populated, very busy. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, this just points out the obvious to me. So great job making that
Thanks.
video. There's no way in hell that if I genuinely believe that a state-sponsored assassins were coming after me, that I would be in Dollywood with me and my family. I wouldn't risk that. It just, I don't think for a second that she believes that this threat is credible. We've seen no evidence of it. I don't know what else to say about it. That's for sure.
Well, and she said verbatim on her podcast that she didn't go through a proper channel to report it to. Well, first she said that the White House had the details, but on her podcast, she said that she let the FBI and counter-terrorist organizations know, but through a text message. Like that was her method. That was the vehicle of her communication.
There's no response, by the way.
With no response. So yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I concur. Like if me and my family were out to like a theme park, I have little babies like her, if I had four babies and my husband and all these things like at a theme park, you wouldn't catch me doing that. That's her situation. And I saw from different comments, like I had people commenting on my Instagram and I believe on Facebook. And then I think I saw Ruslan, who is another YouTuber, who said that he also had confirmed sources that saw her. So there were all these witnesses peppered in that she didn't have security with her. I'm sorry, but that to me, that screams other things too. Like if you're making millions upon millions, are you just bankrolling this lawsuit? Like what is actually going on that you don't have a security team? Even being the number one podcaster, that reason alone, you should have a security team. Mm-hmm. So what's actually happening here? That you have your small babies, your husband at a theme park, without security, amid days ago, let's just say maybe even hours ago, you just had this international plot assassination scare by a League of International Assassins ordered by the Macrons. Just saying it out loud, it just doesn't make sense to me.
No. And somehow a French Canadian woman is involved too. Like, like if you're going to have the French Foreign Legion assassinate somebody, I don't know even why that they would need, like, they're under your command. You can just tell them if they're willing to do it, I guess. Like, I don't know that you need to pay them. Real quick, somebody was asking about some receipts. So I'm going to share with you guys a quick video, a portion of the video that I'll be producing and putting it out tomorrow. And I think it really does kind of highlight some of the inconsistencies that are very common in her episodes. Let me get here real quick and I'll play this for you all with a video.
By the way, I'm sure you caught this, but
no,
there's old footage of Tyler Robinson.
Hold on. Let me get this one for you. There's a lots of things about that don't make sense that I'll get into in a minute, but let's jump forward a little bit here.
Hold
on. I don't know. We're talking 12 days prior to this. And this is what, there we go. Use the word vehicle, when in fact he does. Deception is from episode 244. It aired September 29th. Let's play this.
Of most interest to me, what I've learned is that his father does not believe, his parents don't believe that their son committed this crime. I was like, huh? Excuse me? That's a far cry from what the media has been telling us. Remember, the media presented this amazing story. The father realized his son was guilty, so it goes, right? And then he phoned over a friend. That quote unquote family friend informed the family. It was that in-between person that informed the family that Tyler had been identified as the shooter. It's a far cry from what the media has been telling us. Remember, the media presented this amazing story.
All right, so who was this media that created this amazing story? So basically what she's saying here is it wasn't the parents that identified him. It was the family friend that said, hey, look, we've identified him. We think it's Tyler. He needs to turn himself in. But let's jump here to episode 237, September 17th. Just, I don't know. We're talking 12 days prior to this. And this is what Candace actually said to begin with.
I have a source, and everything the source has told me that has happened when we were lied to publicly has proven to be correct. So I am very inclined to believe this source on a couple of other things. And when I speak also to Lance's family, they are confirming what this source is telling me. So we're going to go through this.
All right. So she has a source that she has found extremely reliable. And on top of that, everything this source has said has been confirmed by other people. Let's see what the source actually has to say.
So they released the photo. And then we are told, as my source initially told me, that it was the mother who recognized Tyler, and she phones him up. Tyler says, Mom, I'm sick. She doesn't believe it. She loops in Dad. Okay.
Okay. She does more than loop in Dad. And we're going to talk about that in a second. But look at what she's saying. Just 12 days prior, she said she has a source that confirmed that the mother saw the surveillance footage, recognized her own son. It was the parents that recognized her own son. And she didn't just loop in Dad. She showed the father, Matt Robinson, the surveillance footage of the suspect that the FBI released. And let's read the charging documents. This is the official charging documents. I have them right here. Her reliable source altogether just to change the narrative.
So they released
that Candace and her reliable source confirmed. But here we are 12 days later, and she's contradicting her reliable source altogether just to change the narrative.
So they released the photo.
So that's just one example, folks, of where she completely changes the narrative against the sources that she originally reported. Her source actually stated, her source is the one that stated that the mother confirmed that that was Tyler Robinson in that security footage. And then 12 days later, she said, no, he wasn't ever there. He wasn't ever there. We had the source confirm it, the charging documents confirm it, and yet she completely changes that narrative 12 days later because it's convenient. That's just one example of many, a way that she has continued to manipulate and lie to people time and time again.
Yeah. Yeah. And continues to compound these lies and derive she makes up new lies every day. And you know, that's Candace, right? That's if she's going to do that on her own platform, then she's doing that on her own platform. For me, it's downstream her fans and people who continue to perform mental gymnastics to cover for her and her lies. I think today has been like a very telling day because even what she said to Blake Neff of TPUSA, pick a place, pick a time for the offered debate or the offered live stream to debunk every single one of her lies or her claims. We'll just call it that. And after saying pick a place and pick a time, they do. And she's like, not like that. I want to do a live stream. And it's like, you know, I have this own conspiracy. It's funny because it's like I am watching the conspiracy. It's like she has all these other conspiracies. I'm watching a conspiracy where this is like another mass psychosis that she's causing on a mass audience. And you know, I also wonder, like, what's detailed in the Macron lawsuit is, you know, who controls her, you know, her partial to her entertainment business, and it's her husband, George Tom or George Com is the business. And so it makes me wonder, like, who really is staffed at her podcast? Like, who writes this? Because you and I both know, as content creators, to gather all of this research, to illustrate that research in either audio visual or pictures, however we want to tell the story, that takes a lot of time. And, you know, especially if you don't have help and people are not helping you with the research, that takes a lot of time. So Candace Owens, I see it as physically impossible, especially being a mother of 4. She can't do this all on her own. So I'm wondering who actually writes her podcast, if there is indeed a writer. I do think that she has a teleprompter in front of her. So, I wonder all of these things. And then there's a part of me that also has a little bit of empathy. Like maybe it makes more sense that she's being fearfully controlled. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know. But there's definitely something a lot more produced than what a lot of people perceive.
Yeah, no, according to her, and I only know this from watching well over 20 hours of her episodes now, she has a team of 4.
Mm,
And I never got if that included her or she has 4 other people. But
mm,
I mean, I don't know. I mean, she's clearly reading the teleprompter. That entire hour-long episode is typed out prior to. That takes a lot of time, a lot of work, and I'm sure a lot of coordination doing. Uh, you know, I would look, because I really liked Candace before all this stuff went down. I think she was a great conservative voice, going back 2 or 3 years ago before she did start getting weird. Once she started going off, and look, I actually was cheering for her on the Macron case. I don't know if it's true or not that Bridget Macron is a dude or was a dude. I love that thought because I don't like the Macrons. I don't know if it's true or not, and I think it's fun to hopefully she comes up with some. And I was all into it. I'm like, oh, hopefully she'll come up with some stuff. We'll prove it, and that'll be a funny thing. I don't think, when she sits there and says that she believes the French and Bridget Macron had Charlie killed to distract her from investigating Brigitte Macron, that is a level of narcissism and self-importance that it's hard to describe.
right.
I think it's so ridiculous that the world famous investigator Candace Owens is so important that Brigitte Macron is going to have Charlie Kirk killed to throw her off the case. I think it's ridiculous on its face. I don't know, but like I said, I think it's so important that we point these things out because she is tricking millions and millions of people. And
Yeah.
the problem here, folks, is that if you're gullible enough to believe her nonsense with zero evidence and a completely incoherent narrative that has gone on for 3 months, then you will believe anything. And that's literally a national security problem here in the United States. You will be tricked into voting certain ways. You'll be tricked into voting for certain laws. You'll be manipulated in ways that you can't even imagine, that you are being manipulated just with your algorithm and social media as it is. But when someone with a story with so little depth as hers can trick so many people into believing this nonsense, it really is concerning. I think it's something that more people need to speak out about.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I see this as a bigger operation. I see a lot of Americans demoralized. I see, it's funny because it's more than her. The people that promote her are somewhat okaying the radical Islam. She herself read the Quran on her podcast. Kind of just normalizing it and in a way coinciding it with the Christian faith, which we're not the same, it's just not the same faith. Um, I see that the influencers that she also sides with, like she recently did a podcast with Myron Gaines. His real name is Amru Foodle. He is in my personal opinion, another provocateur who is also trying to infiltrate that culture along with Sneeko. It's like to me, there's an entire ecosystem if you're really paying attention to these groups online that are trying to influence and infiltrate the conservative sphere. And unfortunately, it's been working.
Yeah, I think look, there is a Islamist bend to this without a doubt. And I think it comes down to the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And when you have someone like Candace Owens speaking out against Israel, because look, folks, you can think Israel's evil. I don't care. I really don't. Don't really care what you think about Israel. What I can tell you, there are foreign adversaries that are much more evil and a much greater threat than Israel is. And if they can get in there and they can influence you into believing that Israel is the primary threat and you need to put all of your attention on Israel, they can get away with doing things and manipulating people and causing chaos, political division here in the United States. Like the damage that Candace has done to the Conservative Party is unspeakable. I think that if we don't win 2028, I think it will directly be the cause of Candace. I really do. Like what she's done is nuts. The way that she has damaged TPUSA in getting their message out with zero evidence, with nothing but hearsay, with nothing but gossip girl nonsense, feels and vibes, to me is disgusting. And then she's accusing people of murder. Look, I believe in freedom of speech. We also should be a self-regulating society. Same thing when it comes to, I'm a Second Amendment absolutist. I'm a First Amendment absolutist. I don't think that the government or Facebook or YouTube or X should be censoring our speech. But what I do think as we used to do, we used to be a society where if people were leveling accusations, horrific accusations at people without evidence, like people would stand up like, stop. Like that, we don't put up with that because that's not what American principles are about. When you're accusing people of murder, that's slander, that's libel, that's defamation. And you have zero evidence to do it. And look, I think ultimately she's going to get sued. I think TPUSA may end up leveling a lawsuit after it's all said and done. I hope they do. I hope they do. I would like to see the discovery of her sources. I would like to see the evidence that she will not provide for these things.
Right.
Like you want to demand evidence, give us evidence. Like that's the hypocrisy of this is nuts to me.
Yeah, and the biggest concern is the harassment that has been propelled to all of the subjects that she has brought up on her podcast, that she has insinuated, death threats that have been given to some of these people. And I mean, my God, like just as humans, these people saw Charlie Kirk get brutalized in broad daylight, and these were close people to them. Like his widow has not had, I'm sure she's had to shut off. I think she did mention that she had to shut off social media, but normally she's not given this natural grace to grieve and to mourn in peace, which she should absolutely, especially in this case, she should absolutely been granted that. But so many conspiracy theories that were so malignant against Erica Kirk, and screenshots that were taken of videos that were milliseconds long in reality, and misinterpreting this as like some salacious scandal. I'm talking about her hugging JD Vance on stage. Like, it has got to be something totally spiritual that people find enjoyment out of, harassing people and threatening people to such an extent and believing these, like, I think they're lies in my personal opinion, because they haven't been verified with backed up evidence. So, I feel like all of this sensation is very harmful, and it's malignant, because it is causing a lot of harassment. And how dare you even question it, because you yourself get accused of being some sort of foreign agent and foreign, entity, just simply because you push back on what you're observing.
The problem is so many of her accusations aren't even logical.
Right.
The idea that TPUSA would kill Charlie, like Charlie is TPUSA. He built TPUSA from the ground up. That was his legacy. That is his legacy, and she's destroying it. Like, he was TPUSA. He is, he's the one, he is the cash cow. You're not going to kill the cash cow. Like, it doesn't even make sense. And because they're trying to say, which come to find out, according to Blake yesterday, they said, look, all of our 990s are in order. Like, all of this speculation, this outside accounting that nobody has any insight to their actual books or anything else, they're going off of flimsy tax records and all this other stuff and trying to make accusations out of that when it doesn't even make sense. And then they switch to Israel, and then they switch to again France, and like it doesn't even pass the logic test at all. And yet
Right.
people will believe it because it's fun, it's interesting. And what it's turned into is this, choose your own adventure murder mystery series made for Lifetime that people tune in every night. Like, oh, what's new? What's happening? And it's sick. It's like you're doing that on the grave of Charlie Kirk and at the expense of his friends that watched him die, and then
Right.
picking apart things that happened, just like you said, picking apart the things that happened, like, and it's an extraordinary event that none of these people have ever experienced, ever expected to experience, and you're criticizing them because you don't think they acted like they should have in this traumatic event. Like, I'm sorry, but F you. Like, you are such a piece of garbage to sit there and do that to people. Like, I don't even know how. I don't understand why so many Americans would take her seriously, would believe this stuff. It's mind-boggling to me. And like you kind of talked about a second ago, I have been ever since I started my channel, I've always been political. I've always talked about conservative politics. I have never been attacked and accused and been, exposed to like these smear campaigns where you got Baron Coleman and some of these other people like saying that I was Googled by Israel, that I have, that I was given $10 million from Israel at some point. Like, F you people. Like,
Yeah.
I don't even, I would literally die before I took money to change anything that I believed, or would never take money to say something that I don't believe in. Like, it's the most disgusting thing that I can even think of. And for you to accuse me, and by the way, without ever pointing out one thing that I've said that's a lie, without ever even coming back and arguing the points that I've made and other people like you have made, like, that never happens. All they do is accuse you, try to, reputationally damage you so that people won't listen to you when they never argue the points that you're trying to make.
Oh yeah, I mean it's indicting your character, and thinking that you're going to be demoralized and into not speaking out about it anymore. And we talked a little bit about this before the live stream, but I was targeted with a slander campaign before, this is nothing new to me. Just picking apart little bitty details, and that might be, and it's funny because that's actually what you just said. Candace does that. She takes something that's very ordinary and standard, and she takes it and she makes this illustration as if it's like something completely not normal. And it's like, people will do that with your own life. They will, especially if you're public online, you have any sort of influence with an audience, any platforms, they will absolutely just contrive this narrative about you, and they'll push that and try to demoralize you. And it's like, when you're secure and you just like, no, like this is an entire campaign, and it feels like there's something much bigger to this. There's a much bigger operation than, you just keep pushing. I have never felt so secure in the position that I'm in, being a very devout Christian, again, just being a Christian Zionist, and being friendly to God's people. It's like, this is what God ordered us to do. Like, these are God's people. Yeah, sure, he did mention other races, nor Jew, nor Greek, like, of
Neither
course.
Gentile
But
nor Jew.
right, it's like he very specifically talked about his people, and it's just peppered throughout scripture. So it's like, I have never felt so secure in reading scripture and seeing how this has been developed out in our own carnality, and how we interact with people. And what, like, didn't Jesus say, like, if the world hates you, like, it hated me first? Like, it feels like I'm supposed to be here. It feels like if I'm
I
not
agree.
marching in step with pagans and people who are agnostic and having the same opinions and sentiments as them, I feel like I'm in the right place as a Christian. So, that's fine. Like, scripture always warns us that this would happen, and you just have to be really secure and rooted in your faith to just keep going and keep telling the truth. And of course, in all of this, it's really crazy because it not only is it a political operation, in my personal opinion, like something that's trying to demoralize Americans, it's crazy that it's a simultaneous satanic operation to get us Christians like derailed off of our biblical principles and believe in theologies that are not biblical. Like that part to me is like where I'm scoped in on, like, and so being rooted, you can't really get rocked too hard if you're rooted in your faith, or if you're rooted in truth.
No, I agree. And I feel, look, it would be so easy. And I've talked about this, and I don't mean to beat a dead horse, folks, but I can tell you right now, I've not made money off of this. I've lost tens of thousands of dollars putting the time. I've went out to UVU. We had a 3D drone survey. I've been on the ground. I've talked to these people. Like, why hasn't Candace done that? Candace hasn't been to UVU since this has occurred. I've spent all this time doing these videos because I feel compelled to, for the truth. The truth is all that matters. and look, we can see what gets the clicks, likes, and views. If you, I don't care what conspiracy you jump on. You can be the palm gun guys. You can be drones flying over. Those get views. People love them. Like that, like the conspiracy, the unevidenced conspiracies have now become the orthodoxy. And the moment that you step outside of that, even though we have a ton of evidence backing up the narrative that Tyler Robinson absolutely killed Charlie Kirk. Like I know that after looking at this for months and months and months. And for the first month and a half, I was completely open to whatever else. But after being there, after talking to people, after going through the evidence, after looking at what makes sense, like the evidence is overwhelming. And that's only the evidence that we know of. Like they have voluminous amounts of evidence that the defense said, hey, we need another 2 months to go through this evidence. And that's all the evidence that's not listed in the charging documents.
And see, that's my entire argument. Like, how do people not know? Like, this is an ongoing homicide investigation.
Yeah.
What is so hard for people to understand that? They are not going to declassify an ongoing homicide investigation. Sure, there have been leaks in history, but that has caused problems down the line. And, they are not going, especially when we have a DOJ and a Justice Department that has the best interest in finding out what happened to Charlie Kirk with a well-rounded history and a thorough review of all the evidence. They are not going to declassify this evidence for people on the internet because we have microwave mentalities. I'm sorry, that's just not how it works. So, I find it amusing when people are like, there's holes in the story. I'm like, well, you don't know the whole story. They've only let you see a portion of the evidence, not everything that they have, and even like you said, even with what you have, you're convinced that Tyler Robinson killed Charlie Kirk. But it's like that's not even a portion of what they have. They still haven't declassified everything. There hasn't even been a trial. There hasn't been a verdict. So it's amusing to me that people feel entitled to such detail when also it's like you would be causing a misjustice, if that were to happen, if there were leaks or if they were to declassify this prematurely, that can cause a mistrial. Like, are we not concerned about that? Do you what if you are wrong in your conspiracy theory and Tyler Robinson is in fact the killer? Wouldn't you feel bad and horrible that you caused a mistrial? It's like, do you really care about justice for Charlie Kirk? Because if you really cared, then you would be patient and you would allow the trial and all these things to transpire in the fashion that it would. And there's just a methodology to an investigation. But people have microwave mentalities. They don't want to wait. They have no patience whatsoever.
Yeah, no. And the problem is, this is the real problem is people's minds were so warped within the first 2 weeks of this that they won't accept anything beyond that. They won't accept anything that the government says. They were convinced that, this was AI video, which wasn't true, that, all of these things, Candace keeps saying time and time again is one of the clips I highlighted in the video. She keeps saying, "Oh, you think you got to be Spider-Man? You know, this guy's Spider-Man. He's climbing up on the roofs." Folks, you can walk right up to the roof, and it's like literally going to a patio. Like,
Right.
for her to continually use that straw man nonsense and this gross exaggeration to make the idea that he was on the roof, such a ridiculous notion, is just another, like, everything that she's doing has all the hallmarks of propaganda and misinformation. It's intentional, it's designed, and it is working fabulously to deceive the gullible among the American people. It's a fact. And the problem is not just this case, it's the ripple effect that it has on everything else that we have in society. And, you know, what you're going to end up doing, part of this is undermining the Trump administration. And what you're going to end up doing is you're going to say, you know what, Candace convinced me of all this nonsense for the Trump administration, so I'm not going to vote. And now we're going to end up with another Biden or worse, that now we have much more state involvement in all our stuff. We have much more surveillance. We have much more disinformation. You are trading something good for something much worse, all because you were deceived by Candace Owens and all of her minions. And it's a shame. It's a real shame.
It is, you know, and I've seen, you know, it's been a long time coming because, again, this predates Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk, her exploiting this entire tragedy for her gain. I've seen it all year, you know, ever since Trump was inaugurated. You know, there was this influencer campaign that was developing out to undermine his presidency and to turn people against his presidency, you know, and especially what happened.
Hold on real quick. I don't mean to interrupt you, Natalie.
Sure.
Hey, I'm just going to let you guys know that if you throw up in the comments how much are you getting paid, or you're being paid by Israel or Bibi Netanyahu, you're getting banned.
Okay.
Like, it's dumb, and you're not an adult, so you're just getting banned. So Debray Kirby 8606, you're banned. So enjoy. Sorry, Natalie, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh no, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, I mean, it's just predating this entire situation. I've seen it develop out. You know, I saw one influencer in particular who always promotes the conspiracy theory, sensationalizes the conspiracy theories. His name is Ryan Mata. He started off, this is just an example, but he started off springboarding off of the child trafficking situation, and he made great content, and he made documentaries, and he quickly pivoted into this anti-Trump, anti-Israel, anti-Jewish people. He himself in July, there's a tweet that still exists that says, "I don't care, you know, it's America first, and I don't care if we hand over the midterms to the Democrats. If we do, so be it." I'm paraphrasing here, but that is exactly what we're dealing with. You've got mega influencers like this that have hundreds of thousands of followers that are influencing people not to vote, just like Candace did on her podcast tonight, in her tweets, you know. So it's demoralizing Americans from voting. And you know, quite literally, it's like, how do you not see that the radical leftists have now won? They spent years and so much money in trying to psychologically manipulate people, and they won. Congratulations, they won. They are now turning people against the Trump administration, and they're dancing. I'm sure they're dancing because they found a clever way to do it, and it was to infiltrate the conservative sphere. So yeah, I think that this is a matter of, and I really hope, you know, I really hope that there's some sort of, I don't know, like report or something that comes out to point the light to this situation, because it truly is a national security measure, because it's influencing people away from American values, and you know, it's welcoming infiltration openly.
Exactly. No, Thudo 3S. Clearly, you're not a critical thinker, and you don't understand basic things. Number one, what you're presenting right here is a straw man argument. You're pointing to something ridiculous. What I'm telling you, and I've said multiple times on this podcast and even tonight, you have to weigh every piece of evidence. I don't believe the FBI. I don't believe our government. I don't believe anybody. I definitely don't believe Candace, and I don't believe any other social media influencer out there either. What I do is I take every single individual situation, and you have to weigh the evidence and use logic, reason, evidence, and just good old common sense, and then you can come up with what is most likely the truth. When you sit there and use logic like, oh, JFK was assassinated, so therefore Charlie Kirk was assassinated. That is stupid, it's illogical, and you are a dunce. That's being a dunce. And you are gullible, and you are primed to be propagandized and tricked by not only our government, but other governments and other political actors as well. So that's what I'm telling you, is you got to use some common sense and some logic. And what I'm telling you is that the evidence for Tyler Robinson being the killer is overwhelming. And by the way, there's nothing even close that comes to with the amount of evidence, the video footage, everything that we know. There's nothing that comes close to having even a little bit of evidence. There's so much evidence. For those of you who believe in this other stuff, not only are you believing it without evidence, you're believing it in spite of evidence against it. And that's why it makes zero sense. Like when we go through this, here's just some of the evidence we have against Tyler. He confessed to his parents. They're the ones that turned him in. If his parents didn't believe that he was guilty, they would immediately have told the media. As a parent, that is one of the most compelling things out of this all. Like if I knew my kid was being railroaded by the government and there were charging documents that stated that I thought that he confessed to me, there is nothing that would stand in my way from getting out to the media and saying, hey, this is a lie. My kid is being railroaded to the death penalty. Nothing would stop me. Tyler's father identified the gun. Tyler's fingerprints and DNA were on the gun, the trigger, the spent cartridge, on the unfired cartridge, on the towel, on the screwdriver. A shoe sole impression directly below the spot he jumped off matched Tyler's footwear. He confessed via text message to his boyfriend. Lance has never come out and denied that. A forearm print from the shooter's perch matched Robinson's as well. There were targets that had been shot that were found in his apartment where he was preparing for this assassination. The charging documents state that the police reviewed the surveillance footage. They saw the individual move out to the camera's view for a short time. The camera again captured the individual running across the roof, then low crawling to the area where the UVU officer recognized where the suspected sniper had dropped into a prone position. After a short time, which matches the known time of the shot, the individual rose and ran across the roof to the northeast. That's just a little bit of this. So for you people that are saying they don't even have the footage of him taking the shot, they do. You just haven't seen it. They have tons more evidence that proves that Tyler was the one that killed Charlie Kirk. But you won't accept basic logic and facts, and you'll accept everything else, but you won't even use any critical thinking and saying, hey, you know what? This person might be lying to me. She's given me no evidence. And all of her other sycophants and all of her other corroborators that are working with her in conjunction with her that are, basically reposting everything that she posts and just confirming through, I don't know, just reposting that it's true. It's nonsense.
Can I also just insert that applying your critical thinking skills to the idea that also not only has President Trump, had a small time in office, but also Kash Patel and Dan Bongino has also, think about all of the compounded corruption, and people never think about office politics ever. You've got to go through levels. You've got to get permissions. You've got to get certain people fired. You've got to have enough proof to fire this person. You can't just discriminate. You know what I mean? So there's like a whole bunch of office politics that happen behind closed doors that I'm sure is probably happening in the situation behind closed doors at the FBI. So the fact that, yes, like Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, yes, they got their positions, within their, that agency. We don't see everything that happens behind closed door. Not only are they dealing with a compounded possible cabal, possible corruption within the office politics, they have to deal with that somehow, but also they have all of this other compounded stuff, all of these cases, all of these things on their shoulders. It's interesting that people are like, what, because I don't believe the FBI, like that's completely fine. And I understand why people get they arrive to that conclusion, because we have been lied to a lot, and it's been founded out. but also understand that this new administration and the people that have been put into power need time to be able to deliberate all of these politics as well within the office. So it's not just that. And also, I just want to kind of comment. I know this is completely kind of out of left field, but the whole Epstein thing as well, even somebody, as I did research a lot of the Epstein conspiracy theories on my channel, after having this interaction with one of the victims, Maria Farmer, and having, this text message exchange and her trying to, also undermine Trump and kind of throw out the insinuation that he was part of the whole thing. And I was read up on the whole case and up until that point, and that the fact that Virginia Roberts Giuffre never accused Trump. In fact, she she recused the idea that he was
She's
even
on
part
her
of this. Yeah. I it was funny because Maria Farmer tried to insinuate that Trump had some sort of part on it. And when I asked her for the evidence, it's like, I want the evidence. Like, you made this insinuation on my podcast. Like, you should come up with this proof. And it was never delivered to me. So that was and this was something very, very unique that happened that made me shift my thinking in this entire thing, that maybe all of these conspiracies that we contrived on our own, because really, there were some pieces that we had some little pieces, nuggets of truth. I'll just say that. And we kind of spun it up on our own to think that this was this and this was that and this was that. Maybe we contrived a lot of this on our own, and maybe there is some truth to the fact that maybe not, and this is controversial for me to say, but maybe all the victims are not necessarily telling the full truth about what happened. Now, I do believe that Epstein was a scumbag. I'm not at all saying
Sure.
that saying that he's not, but saying that there was this entire thing that was happening, rituals and things like this on the island. That one situation with Maria Farmer had me just kind of pivot into wait, is all of this the truth? Like, are we just
Yeah.
contriving these conspiracy theories ourselves?
I mean, playing
Or
devil's advocate with you just a little bit, you could have someone like her that is lying,
right.
but the rest of it be true. But because you identified that she's lying. Now, look, here's what I think about the Epstein file. I think there's definitely some there, or we wouldn't have the amount of cover up. I don't know where all that goes. What I do know is that people keep blaming Mossad, and that's fine. Maybe Mossad was involved, but what I do know for a fact is there is zero chance that wasn't. If it's all true, that was, and with the amount of Americans and heads of state that were involved and implicated, and just at the island, there is zero chance the CIA didn't know exactly what was going on. And the reason I think that it's being covered up the way that it is I think that was actually a CIA operation to, to compromise people that they want to compromise. That's what I think. Maybe Mossad was involved too. Maybe Mossad was involved with Epstein, but without a doubt, the oversight of that entire thing, if it took place, had to be overseen by the CIA. I think that's, and I think that's why we have such a pushback and a cover up on that. But like you said, a lot of most of what we know about Epstein is speculation. We don't have very much evidence. Going back to, look, I am critical a little bit of Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. I agree with you that we're dealing, they're just getting in. They've been there less than a year. They are dealing, the deep state didn't go away, folks. As a matter of fact, I think this whole Candace Owen things, I think it's partly ran by the deep state. The deep state didn't go away that was doing all the indictments and everything against Donald Trump and all the misinformation against Donald Trump and the Steele dossier. What they realized is that direct approach didn't work. And I think they've shifted their fires, and now we're going an indirect approach. And I think there are elements of that within this entire thing that, look, I think the intent behind this is ultimately to undermine the Trump administration and undermine its power and political influence in general. I did want to address this comment real quick. She's on my channel, but she's talking to you, I guess. Says, I wish you did more shows, Natalie, about the children again, instead of what Candace is doing or saying. This is another thing that really irritates me Candace can get on every single day and do a show about people doing, accusing people of horrendous things, and people just eat it up. But if you do one show a week or a month, I'd say out of the, I don't know, last 10 shows, maybe 3 of them we involved Candace at all.
Mm-hmm.
The last 2 shows have been heavily about Candace because I want to make sure that we are putting into this stuff. But for some reason, like, oh, just stop. Don't talk about Candace. Like, we go into this victim mentality, this protection of Candace, while all the people she's accusing in of these horrible things, they get no protection. Not only do they not get protection, you guys grab your pitchforks and your freaking torches and run around the village like crazy people calling for blood for these people with no evidence, by the way. So I'm just so tired of the hypocrisy on that.
Yeah, and what I will say is, I am an anti-trafficking activist, and I do, still people don't see what I do behind the scenes and trying to, build a nonprofit and building some things that are going to be very helpful. So I'm just one person. But what I will say to that is, I've been on social media for a while now, and I also pointed out the BLM riots. I also pointed out the COVID narratives. I also pointed out the big celebrities and the mainstream media and the nighttime hosts, So people, forget that I also covered that as well. And people can go to my Instagram, they can scroll all the way down and see all of that content. In fact, I got nuked, from one of my first primary accounts from doing that. So I faced this censorious era, within that time. So it's not that I never talked about anything else. I always commented on pop culture. Now, with that being said, like I mentioned before, this is the same level of psychosis, maybe even worse, that we saw in the COVID era, in the woke era, back in 2019, back in 2020. So this is a sensational era for me that I just can't look away. It's like we're living through another woke era, and you see all of these riots happening, and you're just not saying anything. Like, that's not what I would do. And this is just unfortunately, it's just within our side, and unfortunately, Candace Owens is the ringleader in this entire phenomenon. So, just like I wouldn't shut up about any, what I witnessed in 2019 and 2020 and the woke era, like the wokest era, I can't shut up about this because I feel convicted and I feel led to speak out about it, especially when it comes to, once again, her derailing Christians. So, I see this phenomenon. I feel led and called to make content to point out the truth and point out contradictions, just as I did back then. So I'm going to continue doing my work simultaneous to all my other work with anti-trafficking. But I also concur with you. Like, I find it interesting that she's allowed to just run amok and talk about whatever she wants and accuse whoever she wants and run these podcasts every day. This is just another phenomenon where I feel led to call it out. It's just as simple as that.
I agree. I 100% couldn't agree more. I like, exactly. When I saw lies during COVID, I called it out. Same thing. I've talked about January 6th. I think that was absolutely a conspiracy. I think that was a false flag operation. I think we had government provocateurs out there. I think that the 2020 election was absolutely stolen. I think it was a extremely organized and sophisticated voter fraud. Like I always say, I'm only 30% convinced we actually even landed on the moon. There's definitely government conspiracies. I believe them, but they're also, look, the government lies, but so do a lot of other people. And when we are at a state that we're at, there are foreign adversaries and definitely political adversaries that are going to take advantage of it and exploit the situation. I think that's what's happening. And I think at a minimum, Candace is being used and she herself is being exploited as a tool for this. And people with really bad intentions for America are jumping on in the wake of her and pushing that thing. And I think Google's one of them. I think Google is so anti-American. I think they are firmly embedded with China, and I think they're one of the greatest enemies of this country. And I think that's why we see the narratives that we are people are being pushed, that are amplified on social media. I think that's why we see the search, information and what we get from Google. Look, we're being manipulated left and right, and people got to wake up. And I don't really know what else to say. Folks, what we'll do now is we'll open up the floor to some questions for both Natalie and I. And we'll definitely get to some of the live ones, but we will start off with the super chats. Liberty Dude 1775. Even if the 2020 election was stolen, it can't be claimed to be true if the Trump administration now in power isn't going to do anything about it. I disagree with that. Number one, I think it is true. Number two, I think, look, we have a judicial system, a political system, and every other system involved that want to deny that because, look, for those of you that are big into UAPs, look, I am. I've been a UFO nerd since like the early 80s. And I can tell you right now, the main reason that we're not hearing about UAPs is because they think that if we find out there's non-human intelligent life out there, that society will fall apart and like we will just, and the same thing goes with the voter fraud. If we believe, and I think this is true, even more so true, if we are told, we find out that there's proof that we had a fraudulent election, number one, there's no way of going back and fixing it. Number two, it's going to cause irreparable damage. I do want to know the truth, but at the same time, I understand that just moving forward and securing elections in the future is probably our only viable option. What do you think, Natalie, on that? I
think that this very vibrantly illustrated our local office. And he did that with COVID. I see that in COVID as well. Unfortunately, we had a lot of corrupt local governments around us, but I think that illustrated it. And I think that we need to correct our own backyard before we go, and then it'll be national. So I think everybody has a civic duty to, find out what your school board's doing, find out what your city council is doing, what they're spending their money on. Like, it starts with us, and we can absolutely have a part in that. So, I think that this illustrated how deep the deep state roots actually go, and that goes to our local office. So, and once again, that also, it goes back to this big influencer campaign. If they're demoralizing you from voting and from, your civic processes, then you've got to really question, like, does that feel right? Should I not look into my local government? Should I not look into my city council and what their budget looks like and what they're spending that budget on? What my school board looks like and what the curriculums are. Like, I think that this illustrates how deeply corrupt some of our local governments are. And I think it starts with us. So, sure. Yes, I understand that a lot of people are frustrated about the voting system. But also, you have to think the Democrats would not spend so much money to corrupt the voting system if it didn't work. So I think just a little perspective shift on that. I do understand that people view it a certain way, but I also view it in a way where we have our own civic duty to contribute towards the system and correct it.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Mark Kevin, I think, left the chat, which is probably a good thing. So what are we doing here? Is it debunking Candace or seeking justice for Charlie? I think those are one and the same. I think at this point, you have to debunk Candace if you want justice for Charlie. She's destroying his legacy, destroying the people around him. Mm-hmm. And if you want to protect Charlie, you have to debunk and show that Candace is lying. I mean, I don't know any other way around it.
Right.
Thank you, Liberty Dude. We appreciate this. Candace is a distraction. Even you are following the rabbit down the hole. Why are we not screaming, investigate all the private communications of the F America Tour group, Discord, text, etc.? We know more than one had prior knowledge. Arrest more. I agree with this. There definitely needs to be more to look into. There was also like the Armed Queers group. There's some other things going on. And look, I do think that this could be, and we've talked about it multiple times on the podcast. I think it is much easier than we'd like to believe to identify, find, and radicalize people like Tyler. I'm not sure that Tyler was one of these people, but I do think there have been mass shooters and other people that have committed horrific acts that have been radicalized online and manipulated and weaponized online. And that could be from government entities. We know about MK Ultra, that didn't stop. Could be political entities, could be foreign adversaries. I think that is an aspect that needs to be looked into more. What do you think, Natalie?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that this might be oversimplifying it, but when we have a full evidence review, I think that this will be easier to illustrate. That's just how I see it. I think that we just don't have all of the details for a good reason right now because, of the standard methodology of an investigation into a homicide. So, I think it's just simply that we just don't have everything right now. And I think, what happened to a process? Like, why do we have such a microwave mentality? Why do we have what is it going to do if we know right now? Is it going to bring Charlie Kirk back? Is he coming back? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
what is that going to do?
I hear what you're saying. Here's where I started in this to begin with. I don't trust the government. And when we have these situations like this, I think it is good that we have these citizen journalists on the ground looking at things, exploring things, so that if and when we do get to the trial state, we can call BS on certain things. A great example of this was the Trump assassination. Look, I think all the things that happened around the Trump assassination, like the evolution of all these theories. I don't know if you were paying attention to the J13 investigation and all this stuff. Like I was heavily involved with that as I am with this. And we saw all the same things, the crazy different theories. There was multiple shooters. There were drones in the sky. There were people shooting out of windows that didn't break. And all of it ended up being nonsense. And Thomas Crooks was the shooter. Now, the problem that I have with what we're seeing now is once he was killed, like there was no real investigation. And then on top of that, like we don't know anything about his digital footprint prior to, and that is suspicious. I would not be surprised if there were some sort of government entity that intentionally targeted and radicalized that kid and weaponized him toward Trump. And I wouldn't be surprised if there were 1,000 other Thomas Crooks that were being developed at the same time. I don't know if that's true. I think it's very possible. And I think the fact that we have so little information about Thomas Crooks post-event, and that's where I do see the importance of people being on the ground and basically sanity checking the government and making sure that we are holding them accountable. Because if we just sit back and wait, then we can be manipulated. When there's people out there that are covering the evidence and looking at the evidence, and I think we need that because we no longer have a media that we can trust. That's for sure. But what we can't do, people like you, people like me that are trying to do some sort of citizen journalism, we're not going to replace the fake news by out fake newsing the fake news. And that's what a lot of these people are doing.
Right. That's fair. That's a fair perspective.
CJ Carenti, thank you for becoming a member, folks. If you want to support us, you can become a member. I'm sure Natalie has memberships on her channel as well. Definitely go over her and give her a subscribe and a like and select the bell icon and go give her a follow on. You got any other social media besides X and YouTube? Thank
you. X, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook page. Yeah.
What's your Instagram handle?
At Natalie Denise.
Perfect.
Just without the underscore like the X, just Natalie Denise.
If Candace's goal was to create chaos, then she has succeeded at it. Like I think there is a element of self-grandeur and delusion with Candace too, and that's just my personal opinion on it. Pure speculation. Believe it or not, I'm not a psychologist, but like there's some weird things going on with Candace. Even the things that she's constantly saying that she was like a Mason, i.e. a founder of TPUSA. She has stated, I helped build TPUSA. TPUSA was founded by Charlie in 2012. Candace Owens worked for TPUSA for less than 19 months. To say that you helped build it, to say that you were a Mason, a founder of TPUSA, is a little bit diluted in my mind. Candace was always a leftist plan. I was warning about her for a decade. Charlie forced her out of TPUSA, and now it's her time to tear it down. What's your thoughts on that, Natalie?
Yeah, it's funny because she very, I'll say like she hasn't really fully addressed. Well, I mean, it's the nature of Candace Owens to not fully address things, right? We're seeing that now, but she hasn't really fully addressed the social autopsy that she created, the doxing website when she was a leftist. She never really apologized for that. She never really addressed the idea of that. And I did find her blog that she headed. I think it's like degrees 160 or 180 or something like that. This was when she was a leftist, and she had this blog, and she had other people contributing towards the blog. It definitely, this is something that I always wonder about, what her pivot was, because it does seem to be that there was this whole controversy with Gamergate, and because she was in an infight with other leftists, she all of a sudden became a conservative. Now, I don't know how much I can confirm that, or I can just say that with confidence, but yeah, it does seem to be that. I mean, she definitely talks great as a conservative, in the years that we've seen her. She's definitely had, she's articulate, and she had some great ideas. So I don't know what to think of that, to be honest with you. Like I do see where she was pretty radical in her pivot. I will say that it was a very sharp pivot. So but it's hard to grasp the detail because it's not really illustrated, but I see what they mean. I mean, I can see what they mean about that.
Yeah. This kind of goes back to what I said earlier. Wow, what a true hit piece on Candace. I don't even agree with Candace, but but aren't you doing the same thing? No, we're not doing the same thing. Number one, we have both provided evidence of that she's lying. I have a whole video of multiple examples that will be put out tomorrow. I've released other videos, the short on how she completely, made this whole case about that the text messages were fake because Tyler doesn't use the word vehicle. And in the exact same video that she uses proof that Tyler calls a car, like moments later, he uses the word vehicle describing a car, and she cut that out. So there's lots of evidence here. And no, it's not a hit piece. It's just telling you the facts that she is deceiving you and pointing out what people need to see. What she's doing is a hit piece because she doesn't have evidence, and she just accuses people of the most horrific things, and yet you guys sit there on your hands. And when people like me and Natalie come out here and point out what's going on with her,
Right.
then you come at us. It's really weird.
It is. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't
No,
mean to
go
interrupt.
ahead. I was done.
I will say I find that comment and that thought very weird, that people are like, why are you so I honestly, I think that it's a lot of bot activity influencing the why are you so obsessed, or why are you only talking about her? Because when you really think about it and you look at it at grand scale, like, I don't know if you remember I'm a 90s kid, but if you remember, like, back in the 90s in the tabloids, like, people were zeroed in on celebrities. Like, that's all people talked about in the tabloids, like celebrity. They had,
Yep.
yeah, the celebrity platform. Candace is on that scale. Like, Candace has millions of, if anything, she has more viewers and more tune-ins, more than the mainstream media. I'm sure of that. I am sure of that. So it's like she is on the scale of like a Britney Spears or a Kim Kardashian. And like, she has that much viewership. So it's like, wouldn't you find it weird that if you had an opinion about Kim Kardashian or about Britney Spears, this is telling my age now, or any of these celebrities.
So there you go.
Wouldn't you find it weird that people would press you on, like, why are you so obsessed with the celebrity? Well, it's like they have a big platform. They are these big celebrities. So, they are in front of everybody's face. Why would we not have an opinion, about what they're doing? So
And I
I
mean,
kind of
really,
view it that way.
we're just asking questions. That's
Right.
all we're doing.
That too. That too. It's on that scale, but it's also like peppered in with this is influencing a lot of people in their behavior in American, civic processes. So
Yeah, no, 100%. Like again, she can accuse, she can demand, but anyone that does it to her is demonized, and it's crazy. MTX 485, thank you. The right lacks discernment to go from being lied to by MSM to being lied to by the new media. It's embarrassing. But if QAnon didn't embarrass us, nothing will. And that is a great example. That's something that I wish I would have put in that video, because I think about this all the time. But when I was shooting the video, I didn't think about it. Candace is the newest QAnon. It's
I would
the
agree.
exact same thing. You got all these people all hyped up about all this nonsense. Like, I know guys that are smart, intelligent, I would think normal dudes that were 100% convinced that John F. Kennedy Jr. was going to come back when Trump was elected or some weird thing and all this other stuff. QAnon was definitely a psyop to damage the right. I don't know if you guys have figured that out. And Candace Owens is a psyop to damage the right. It absolutely is. It's engineered, again, like it's textbook psychological and information operations. Thank you for reminding me to unsub. The guest is blind and so are you. Use this $5 to wipe. CO is on to something. Charlie Kirk was assassinated. JFK assassinated. Again, just what a logical fallacy that is. So thank you for the $5. I appreciate you. Gray Hughes investigates in the house. Thank you, Gray. Candace Owens, who claims to have loved Charlie Kirk, is successfully destroying Kirk's turning point legacy, which is disgusting. Keep kicking ass. The truth is what we do. Candace tricks her viewers. I agree with that assessment. Yeah. What are the three biggest Candace has lied about, and what's the proof she is lying? So one, she's lied about. The biggest one is that TPUSA was involved in the Charlie Kirk assassination. There's tons of evidence against that. There's no evidence for that. And that's one of the most damaging things. The other big thing that really is irritating me is she's also talking about how the National Guard was involved. I got a whole clip in the video where she's like, this was a military operation. The National Guard was involved. The French Foreign Legion was involved, and Israel was involved. That's what she said in her December 1st podcast, which is where I pull some of the clips from. So first of all, she doesn't know anything about the military, clearly, but I don't know what she thinks. That number one, she's claiming that Americans in uniform were involved in the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Nothing could be more disgusting. Nothing can be more preposterous. I mean, what do you think the National Guard is? They're assassins. They're assassins 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. It's like the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. There's plenty of more. And again, watch my video tomorrow. I lay them out. Well, you got any other big ones?
The green hoodie guy that she pointed out on her social on X. She pointed to this screenshot of this guy in a green hoodie, and if anybody knew who he was, and he like commented under the post, and he was like, hi, that was me, sorry, I'm on the soccer team, and that's my soccer hoodie from UVU, and we were just there to get food and check it out. It's like, yeah. right there today where she accepted the debate or the live stream with Blake Neff and TPUSA to debunk or to go through, we'll just say go through every single one of her claims, every single one of her insinuations. And on her podcast verbatim, she said, pick a place, pick a time. And they did. And then she was like, no, not that. So it's like, not that time, not that place, and now you see all of you can see it downstream. You can see all of her fans, create these mental gymnastics that, well, no, she's not going to go because security, hello. And it's like, when you even debunk that, well, she was just at Dollywood days ago. You know what I mean? Just last night, there was a picture that one of my followers posted onto one of my comments. She was at a Tucker Carlson party with all these other people, just in the public once again. Yeah, it's under a tent too. not a very secure structure, I would think. I don't know so much about security, but I wouldn't think that that's like the most secure thing. So she's clear in my personal opinion, she's clearly not afraid. So there's just a couple more little things there, just
Yeah.
debunked.
Well, the other big lie that she's pushed that's super damaging as well is that Tyler Crooks didn't do it. She has done everything she can to exonerate Tyler Robinson. I'm sorry, Tyler Robinson. So that's a real problem too, when there's so much evidence for that, and there's a lot of proof that she's lying on those. Candace hates her enemies more than she cares for Charlie and America. Only enemies are involved. Leftists are let off the hook. DEI backfire.
Yeah.
Candace also is open to MK Ultra thing too. Do you not think she is trying to be open to every outcome? But you bring up good points too. No, I think she is desperate to use anything to verify the narrative that she's trying to push. She'll pull from MK Ultra. She'll pull from, the Foreign Legion. She's desperate to prove her point, or not even to prove her point, to convince you of her point, while she has no evidence to back it up. And so that's what she's doing. Just because again, I don't understand. This is another logical fallacy. It's like, oh, well, she believes it too. Like, okay, well, she's still lying. Okay. The difference between her and I is I'm not going to intentionally lie and create narratives that I know are not true. And I think she has to know these things aren't true. At a minimum, she has a responsibility to go back in time and to correct the record and say, you know what? I've switched from this thing over to this thing. I no longer believe these. I was wrong about these people. I apologize to these people. I don't believe now that they were involved. I believe that the French Mossad is involved or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Just like her Netanyahu letter claim, at the very beginning, where she was like, what Netanyahu recited in Charlie Kirk's letter to him is completely, I guess I'm paraphrasing here, but she said that there was a distortion on the representation of what the contents of that letter contained. And when Stella Escobedo, a journalist with OAN, she obtained a source that had the letter, and the New York Post actually, obtained a copy themselves. She actually confirmed that the letter that Netanyahu recited was 100% what he recited. She never went back to correct that or to retract any of her statements.
MTX 485 says, I'm a former leftist, thousands of TCs, TRs, Thomas Crooks, and Tyler Robinsons. Bruce, thank you for becoming a member. We appreciate you, bud. Thanks for the support. I think affairs are romantic. Candace article.
Yep.
Becky's Blay, thank you for becoming a member. I'm sure I screwed that. Becky Sibley. There we go. Just want to say thanks for being brave enough to stay on the side of truth, Gary. What you have done to reveal the truth is deeply appreciated. We need more brave men like you. God bless you. Same thing with you, Natalie. I appreciate you being brave enough to get out there, because it's so easy. I'll be honest with you, folks. I wanted to avoid this because I knew and my wife asked me to avoid this too. I'll be honest with you. Even now we're getting a bunch of crazy emails and things like that, just for the mild things. And I don't even think I went hard on Candace yet. And I'm not going to go hard on her. I'm going to be truthful and point out the inconsistencies, the lies, and the deceptions that she's doing. My interview with Brian Harpole, and not just my interview, but also hearing some of the things that he's going through, some of the other team members of the security team are going through. If anything, I owe everybody an apology for being a coward, for staying as quiet about it as long as I did. Seeing what the real pain that they were going through and the things that they were facing made me ashamed that I hadn't spoke out about Candace a month earlier, because that's about a month and a half or so ago is when I wanted to, and I should have. But I also, the other truth of this is I've tried to create like this coalition of people that you guys that have watched my show know, like I've had people on that believe that the you know, that he had an exploding microphone on. I've had Zeb Boykin on, you know, he believes he was shot from the rear. I wanted to create this, I don't know, collaborative environment to where we could get these people that I felt like were good faith actors and like just talk about like as friends that disagree. And I think that way we would combine our resources. We'd be able to sanity check one another. And like, why can't we disagree? But that's not what happens. Like all of those people end up going after you and character assassinating you, even though like I was trying to give a voice to everyone. And also like, I'm not so ego driven that I don't think that I can see things incorrectly. Right. So like having other people on that see things from a different point of view, I was hoping would highlight some blind spots that I may have. Like maybe I'm not looking at this evidence, or maybe I'm missing something that they see that I don't want to be tricked. I don't want to be tricked by anybody. So I need as many perspectives as possible. And then I can look at them all and assess what I think to be true. And that's another reason that, you know, this is all one big psyop, is because that type of mentality will not be tolerated at all. Like the moment you say anything where you're like, oh, well, you know, the charging documents and all the evidence seem to be coming together, that seems to be make the most sense. Like, oh, you're paid by Israel, you're a Fed, you're whatever. It's nuts. I don't care. I trust you, Gary. So I thought I'd ask your thoughts on this. Saw a video by Nate VFT that said Trump wants to let Chinese workers, that he was doting terrorists in the Oval Office. Look, I'm not going to talk about, well, here's what I'll say. Nate is also a fellow Green Beret. Never going to speak bad about another brother in the regiment. I disagree with Nate on a lot of things. The fact is like, I think every president has had bad actors inside the White House. Like the first step to solving a problem is diplomacy. And then, you know, that's the carrots. And then later on becomes the stick. So I don't care if he had terrorists in the White House. Every president has, like, I think that's almost a non sequitur as far as I'm concerned. She lied when she said it was strange and corrupt that Macron's filed a suit in Delaware, yet her business is incorporated in Delaware. That's why. That's very true. And then I guess, what was the whole thing where she had a source? She was like, I don't know. She ended up reading her own address, some address that she had, or her lawyer's address in Delaware on the air.
Yeah, that was Jay Witt podcast that broke that. So he actually pointed out that she read out the very address that her lawyers were located at, and I made a joke. Maybe it's also Rodney Grill, which is also located in that building that has some sort of black operations going
on. I'll try to get to some of the live comments as well. Both sides suck. How can you argue anything different? I don't argue that differently. And this is one of the things that conservatives are supposed to be, is conservatives are supposed to be known for using common sense, logic, and, you know, just having a little bit more whatever, right? Both sides do suck. The left is trying to destroy America, whether it's the policies of all the stuff that's been shoved on us from COVID. They want to take your guns from you. Like we can go down the list. The trans ideology that's being pushed upon us and our kids. There is a lesser of the two evils. With that being said, I think we need to be discerning and make sure that we vote in the right people, from local all the way up to federal. What's your thoughts on that, Natalie?
You know, yeah, I mean, I think I think people have lost nuance in their thinking, and I think it's as simple as that. There is duality, and I don't disagree. You know, I don't disagree. I just think that people have kind of lost a nuance in their thinking, and as simple as that. That's my opinion.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's see. We'll do like 2 more comments and then we'll get Natalie out of here. I'm sure she has other things to do. I'm just trying to see a good one. All right. Tom Kiefaber says all this overt recreational Candace trashing, while in real time, what's emerging hourly now about TPUSA's finances is a figurative cesspool of multi-million-dollar scandals, and it's just begun. Look, everything that has been alleged. First of all, I've seen some really good debunkings, and I haven't delved really deep in that. What I can tell you is everything that's being alleged as far as TPUSA's finances are people outside the organization that have no idea what they've done with the IRS or anything else. And like a lot of the stuff that you can find, and I know this, I also have a 501c3, like a lot of the stuff that you find online about charities, like it's not up to date. You're sending it to the IRS. The IRS has to post this stuff. Like they don't always do that stuff. So like it's incomplete, and I think it's going to end up being completely incorrect as well. Blake addressed that to yesterday. He said that all of their finances were in order. Maybe that isn't true. I'm sure that information will come out. But what I can tell you is the information that's been being put out by social media, I don't trust it because I know it's incomplete, just because I know how the system works with that. What do you think, Natalie?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely concur on that, 990s and then the corrections as well, that takes time too, like for the IRS to post. So, if they did indeed correct anything, that's going to take a little time to post. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And a lot of people, when we did our audit on the National Human Trafficking Hotline, we had to learn how to read 990s. And that was also daunting to know how everything was categorized. And with that being said, we don't see everything. We don't see the contractors or how they outsource some of this work to I don't know, like certain organizations or what. Like people think that they know what they're reading, and they don't necessarily know everything that's illustrated. So I think that 990s are daunting. I think that for something as big as TPUSA, especially that, I think Blake mentioned that they had an external auditor, audit their organization's finances. They're out
They did it
in the
every year.
open. Yeah. So I think that it's a lot more nuance. Like people just don't know everything that goes on behind closed doors and how everything is classified on a 990. I don't think everybody has knowledge of that. I definitely had a learning curve, just learning about that. So
Yeah, he said they actually had an external auditor come in every single year and audit. And by the way, he also said that there was never an expense, never a receipt or anything else that Charlie didn't actually go through and actually approve. So again, for all you people, and this is the other thing too, when we're talking about Ian Carroll, we're talking about, you brought up Ryan Mata. There's a bunch of them. I have a whole bunch of pictures in here of tweets about TPUSA, about Charlie Kirk before Charlie Kirk was killed. And all these people that are investigating Charlie Kirk hated Charlie Kirk before he died. And this is about destroying his legacy while he was alive. And most of these people, again, what you're really attacking is Charlie Kirk himself, whether you realize it or not.
exactly.
He built that company, that organization rather. He approved, he knew everything that was going on. And so that's what you're really doing, whether you want to admit it or not.
Right.
Last comment, and I'll throw something up and we'll call it a night, folks. Icy Ducks. We are not Candace followers. We are people who care about what and where corruption exists in our country. Information is power. We want the truth. I completely agree. And I think Natalie does too. Whether you follow Candace or not, look, I think what we can all agree on is, and what we should agree on is the truth, and just being careful and understanding that whether it's for clicks or views or votes or just trying to change our perception about our government or creating chaos within our country. There's lots of people that are vying for our attention and trying to convince us of things that aren't true,
Right.
or omitting. This is a big problem, is like they omit the other side, the other argument, right? So something might look really bad, but your only other alternative is something that's not nearly as bad.
Right.
So, we're being influenced and we're being propagandized constantly, from all directions, and we just need to be smarter about it. And that's what this show was about. That's what this channel's about. And yeah, Natalie, give us some sort of inspirational last words.
Well, I'll just kind of piggyback off of that. I think people just need to stay vigilant on, the discourse out there. And if it aligns with radical Democrats and radical leftists, the theology, then, know that our political spectrum is not a left and right horizontal axis. I don't think. I think it's a horseshoe. I think that the radical left and the radical right are closer at the tips, just like a horseshoe. And then the curvature, the bottom of the horseshoe, is where centrists and normal leftists, normal right wing kind of live. And so if something aligns with, a radical theology, then more likely that's probably somewhere where you've got to question where all this is coming from, because I've seen a lot of, our conservative sphere, our mega influencers who have sudden pivots in their theology, and they're aligning with people like Ilhan Omar all of a sudden, and AOC. So when you see them march in lockstep, you question that and really take that apart. And to the Christians out there, I also, challenge you to feel more convicted. And when something doesn't feel right, run to scripture. Don't just run to an influencer. If you're marching in lockstep with atheists and agnostics who are chanting hate for a certain group, go back to scripture and go back to God about that. Like, you have to question yourself. You can't think that you're running with the world and the world is accepting your theology and then you're in the right spot. That's not what Jesus said. So I would run to scripture and check it against that, and renew your knowledge every day. You can't just read one scripture and think that you're going to be covered and you're going to be knowledgeable. Continue to read it over and over again, and study it, and know historical context. And just ask God for clarity in this really confusing time, because we are definitely infiltrated. We are definitely being derailed and influenced, and it's so chaotic out here. But when you're rooted in your faith and you know what your faith says, then you can't be shaken. So that is my biggest plea to you guys. And if you don't know Jesus, I would beg you guys to investigate that and search that, because that is what truth actually is. That's all that matters. And so I would encourage you guys to just run to Jesus, and bounce everything, all the truths that you think against scripture.
Well, I can't do any better than that. What I will add to that, folks, is if you haven't checked out Wes Huff, I really suggest you go check out his content.
Yes.
He is an apologetic, which means he explains scripture in context. Also a historian, and he has some extremely interesting content. It's scripture based, but he just brings it to life in a way that I haven't seen anyone else. And I love his content, but he digs deep into faith, into scripture, and it's definitely worth checking out. And, I would just tell everybody out there to be brave, right? Charlie was a great example of getting out there and opposing lies, right? Stand up for what you believe in. That's what we're going to do here on this channel. We're going to continue to tell the truth. And right now, I think the lies that Candace is putting out needs to be addressed. We're going to continue to do that for a while. So that's just what's going to happen. And I think it's important. And as Charlie Kirk said, truth isn't always popular, but it's always worth it. So if you haven't done so already, make sure you like, subscribe. Natalie, thank you so much for coming on. Don't go anywhere. But folks, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, become a member. Yeah, we love you. We appreciate you. We will be back on Wednesday. We may do something in between there, so make sure you hit that bell icon and select all. That way, and I will be putting out a video tomorrow. But until next time, stay armed, stay ready. We'll talk to you soon.